Hi everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. This video is going to be my Geekly Wrap-Up for the week of October 28th through November 3rd. This week I read 3 books and I played 3 board games. So the first book that I read this week was one of the last books on my spooky autumnal TBR, and that was A Skinful of Shadows by Frances Hardinge. This is a historical fiction novel that has some elements of magical realism to it, and it is about this young girl named Makepeace who is growing up during the English Civil War, and she and her family have this unique power whereby they're able to take the sort of ghosts, spirits, souls, whatever you will, of people that have recently died inside of them and basically kind of carry them around as passengers. Her mother had tried to escape from her family who support the royalists because they were basically using this like soul-carrying ability for nefarious purposes. So in order to try and protect Makepeace from her family, she had to run away. Through a series of events, Makepeace actually ends up back at Grishaze, which is the family manor where the family is trying to basically use her as a vessel for all of these ancient souls, as like a repository of all of the people in her family who have ever lived. Little do they know that Makepeace actually already has some passengers living inside of her. I thought that this book was absolutely incredible. I gave it 5 stars. It came out of nowhere. Like, I know that I really loved the previous Frances Hardinge book that I read, which was called The Lie Tree, but this just blew that out of the water. It was absolutely incredible. I would highly recommend it if you are looking for a spooky, atmospheric read, or if you like historical fiction. I feel like we don't often get books about the English Civil War, and it's a really interesting period in history. There's a lot going on, especially because it's a time in history where people were starting to move away from this idea of like the divine right of kings, at least in the Western world, and this book really engages with that in some very interesting, meaningful ways. So would highly recommend this. And then I read the last book here for my spooky autumnal TBR, which was These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. This is a YA novel about a bunch of teen witches that are trying to outsmart a witch hunter who has come after them. There's also some relationship drama involved between some of the witches who are now like broken up with each other, and then the main character has this new crush that may or may not also be magical. Meanwhile, the witches are all trying to keep their magic secret from the regs, who are the non-magical people. And this book was just okay. Like, it was a fun read, it was fine, but there just wasn't anything like particularly memorable about it for me. So I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I believe that there's going to be a sequel coming out, which I will probably read. I just don't think I'm going to buy it. I'll probably get it from the library because, again, it was just all right. And then I read another 5-star book this week. Wow, really firing on all 5 cylinders here, which was The Birch Bark House by Louise Erdrich. I picked this out to read specifically for the indigenous readathon that's happening right now, but it also counts towards Believathon because it is a book that's written for children, and it is a story by an Ojibwe author about a young girl named Omakeyas, and it's basically the story of her growing up and coming of age on her family's island as they have like encounters with French traders in the like sort of Canadian area, and it's a story of like her family and, you know, her little squabbles with her siblings and passing on family stories and how they are affected by like contact with white people and white colonizers and stuff like that. This book was absolutely incredible. Parts of it really made me cry. They were really touching. I loved the importance of family stories and passing down knowledge among family members. In this book, there are a lot of asides that take place where like Omakeyas's parents and grandparents are telling stories about, you know, family history and family life and traditions and what how meaningful their place in the world is to them. So I would definitely recommend this if you are looking for historical fiction, indigenous fiction, or children's fiction. Okay, and then I played 3 board games this week. The first one I played with some members of the wedding party that I was in, and that was called Super Fight. It's basically a party game where you have a judge that's trying to like decide which is the best among multiple submitted cards, kind of like an apples to apples Cards Against Humanity thing. Although instead of just submitting cards, you have to submit your fighters, and you play a card that is a fighter and then an attribute for them, and then you draw a random attribute, and it is your job to judge which of those fighters would win in a fight. I thought that this game was okay. I think it definitely goes on for too long if you just want to keep chatting and talking. There's definitely a time to let the game end, and that's when the cards really start repeating, because for a game of its size and like a base game of its size, there are an awful lot of repeat cards in the game, which I thought was kind of a lazy way to design it. Like, there were multiple cards that would give the attribute like 10 stories tall, and I'm like, you really only need that once or twice in the game. After a while, and you've drawn it maybe 4 or 5 times, it's just starting to look lazy. So I thought that the game was fine. It's nice if you're just looking for, you know, a very basic game to play around the table or get to know each other around and things like that, but I wouldn't go out of my way to play it again. The next game that I played is actually one that we got for our friends as a gift, and that's called Century Spice Road. That is a game that is sort of a very simple strategy game where you're playing as spice traders that are trying to convert your less valuable spices into your more valuable spices. In board game terms, basically you're just moving cubes around and paying to upgrade cubes into other cubes so that you can score points at the end. Because what would a board game be if it wasn't moving around small items in order to be able to score points at the end? I think that this game is actually really great. It reminded me a lot of Splendor, which I have played and didn't like, but I think it's a better version of Splendor. I think that there are more strategic choices that actually go into a game of Century Spice Road. We ended up playing it twice, and I thoroughly enjoyed it both times at both player counts. We played once with 3 and once with 4, and I am looking forward to playing the other games in the series and seeing what the rest of that series has to offer, because I do know that it iterates upon the design of the first game. And then the last game that we played is a repeat game for me, and that's called On Tour. This is a roll and write game. I believe I've told you about roll and writes, but in case you're not aware, basically it is a game where you roll dice and write whatever the result of the dice is on your board, and you're usually trying to solve some kind of puzzle. In this case, the puzzle that you're trying to solve is placing numbers on a map of the United States that at the end of the game you will connect into a like continuous number line, which is where your band is going to go when they tour the United States. So you have to start with a low number. You can only travel to a number that is equal to or greater than the previous number you were at, and you can score extra points in a variety of other ways. We ended up playing this game at 4, I believe. It did last kind of a long time. I think that really if you are playing this game, you do need to make sure that you're kind of flipping over the cards with the cities on them with some alacrity, and you don't want to spend too long strategizing on any individual number placement. First of all, because it's not that kind of game, and second, because I think it'll artificially inflate the playtime a lot more than it needs to be. But the art for this game is gorgeous. The theme, I think, lends itself well to the roll and write, and it is very simple. It is a good game to just sit around and play while having some conversation, or if you'd like to solve a nice little light puzzle. So that is all that I have for this week's Geekly Wrap-Up. Comment down below if you're doing any of these readathons, you've read any of the books that I talked about, or you're interested in the games, and let's get a little conversation going. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. I am on a quest to get to 300 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'm so very close. Got a little under 2 months left, and I think we can make it. So thanks in advance if this makes you decide that you want to subscribe. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!